Good afternoon, viewers, and thank you for joining us on this Hangout. Today we have on this Hangout the outgoing Mission Director for USAID Ghana, Mr. Jim Bever. On September 10th, 2013, Mr. James Bever was sworn in as the USAID Ghana Mission Director. In this capacity, he oversaw USAID's country-specific programs in agriculture, governance, economic growth, education, and health. He first joined the USAID in 1982 and has held several different positions until now. Prior to this assignment, Mr. Bever served for 2 years as USAID faculty in the Department of Security Strategy for the National War College. He also served as Mission Director for Egypt, West Bank, and Gaza and Afghanistan after successfully serving USAID in its Washington, D.C. headquarters as Acting Assistant to the Administrator for Afghanistan and Pakistan and Deputy Assistant Administrator for both the Middle East and Asia Near East Bureau. Mr. Bever is a graduate of Cornell University with a bachelor's degree in economics. He also holds 2 Master of Science degrees, one from National War College in National Security Strategy and one in Foreign Service from Georgetown University. Mr. Bever is also the recipient of the Presidential Distinguished Service Honor for his work. Mr. James Bever, welcome to this Hangout.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm delighted to be here once again on Google Hangout.
Thank you. So we want to talk about Power Africa, Mr. Bever. And we have a question from Kweku Safo, who sent his question via Facebook. He says he wants to know how the USAID is supporting or helping in solving our power crisis in Ghana.
Well, thank you very much, Alan. Thank you, Kweku, for asking that question. It's obviously a fundamentally important question, not only for national policy and the economy, but one that touches almost every person's life in this country. It's impossible to have a modern economy and in the 21st century without having reliable electricity for everything from operating your appliances at home to operating the equipment needed so that those in the workforce can be productive. And when there are power cuts that happen even in our own country, sometimes in America, because of accidents, it affects everybody, both emergency services, hospital care, and people's jobs. So the United States, on behalf of the American people, USAID is working with the Ghanaian government and the private sector in Ghana, as well as international private sector, to see what can be done to improve the problem, address the problem here in Ghana. I think we need a little bit of a historical perspective. If you go back a long time to 1957, 58, 59, your first Prime Minister, Kwame Nkrumah, and our President of the United States, Dwight David Eisenhower, came up with a big, bold idea, which was to use the power of the Volta River to generate hydroelectricity for West Africa. And it was not only for Ghana, it was for your neighbors in Togo and Cote d'Ivoire and Burkina Faso, then known as Upper Volta. So that project, now 3 generations later, is still generating power in your country, although unfortunately right now the water levels are down. That investment endures to this day for the Ghanaian people. And similarly, we are embarked as USAID on working with your government and the private sector to bring new power into the country, to burn your natural gas from offshore, from the Jubilee Partners and other arrangements, ENI and Sankofa in the future. So that gas, affiliated in some cases with your oil that gets exported, that gas can substitute for very expensive imported oil, and your country can afford, using that hegemony, if you will, to generate power for your people in a clean way for the environment and an efficient way. that will generate jobs. It will take a little more time, but I have visited the power station in Atwabo twice now, the gas separation facility in Atwabo twice. Once when I got here a year and a half ago, and once just a few weeks ago. And I was impressed with what I saw. I was impressed with the Ghanaian management and operation of that plant. There are still some Chinese experts helping in the control station, together with Ghanaians who are in that control station. I was impressed with the safety of the plant, and I was impressed with the progress that's been made, even though it took time to get there. So that gas is critically important because it feeds the power stations in Takoradi. The United States Agency for International Development, on behalf of the American people, has been providing the key technical and legal assistance so that all of that gas can in fact be made available for power generation. We've also been involved in trying to help your government decide with the best international practices on which of these independent power proposals that have come in, not just from Americans, but from around the world, should roll forward in the coming couple of years so that, in fact, Ghana can pull itself out of the current difficult times it's finding itself in terms of electric power. So USAID has full-time natural gas advisors embedded with the government of Ghana in various entities, as well as full-time what we call power transaction advisors and legal and negotiation advisors that often meet with your government in London with various independent power proposers in order to move these projects forward. That's on the supply end, if you will, for the fuel, and the supply end for the generation of power. Then there's the other end. There's the consumer end of power and the distribution end. The Electricity Company of Ghana, ECG as it's known, and NEDCO, the Northern Electric Distribution Company based out of Tamale. So we've also been involved with both of these entities and will continue to be deeply involved with both of these entities, along with our partners, what's called MCC, or the Millennium Challenge Corporation. MCC, as you may know, on behalf of the American people, in August, with Finance Minister Seth Terper and with President Mahama looking on and our Secretary of State looking on, signed a $500 million grant, U.S. financing for improving the electric power distribution system and the energy efficiency and, to some modest extent, the renewable energy supplies here in Ghana. That is now in full swing. Ghana has done what they need to do in the way of developing its own what's called MIDA, the MIDA, which is the Ghanaian authority to represent and catalyze the Ghanaian side of the agreement, and progress has been made there. There are some difficult policy reforms that are needed in the distribution system in Ghana, and the American help and American funding is there to support Ghana as it makes its policy decisions into reality. The Ghanaian people deserve to have reliable power, both in terms of supply and in terms of quality. So Dumasor, with everyone's help, will become in the future a thing of the past. So that's what the American people have been doing in a nutshell here in Ghana. We intend to continue this support for at least the next 4 or 5 years. In the case of MCC, for sure for 5 years, and we'll see where we go from that. I'll just close on this by saying that we don't do this in a vacuum. We do this together, not only with your government, we do it with your consumer groups and your civil society groups, your Public Utility Regulatory Commission, your Energy Commission, your Petroleum Commission, and with other development partners like the World Bank, the African Development Bank, the Swiss, and others. So we try to coordinate closely with your government so that we reinforce each other and help as the Friends of Ghana to bring the best future to your people.
Thank you very much, Jim. So in the build-up to this Hangout, we also had questions from other folks, again through our social media. We had one from Abdul Razak Ramadan, and he wanted to know how can USAID set targets together with stakeholders and work aggressively towards ending hunger in Africa. I guess this also ties in well with the Feed the Future project.
Yeah. Well, that again, yeah, a great question from Abdul Razak Ramadan. The American people are deeply committed to the world's effort, African leaders' efforts, and Ghana's leaders' efforts to end hunger and end the worst manifestations of extreme poverty. And Feed the Future initiative of President Obama is an element of that. So I think what I'd like to do is focus in on Ghana if we can, but Feed the Future is a far bigger than just Ghana. But for the sake of this discussion, I think we should focus on Ghana. This is one of our largest agricultural development activities on the face of the earth, what's going on here in Ghana. And we have initiated investing up to $200 million of U.S. technical assistance, supplies, equipment, training, and partnership here in Ghana, in the north, largely north of the 8th parallel, so northern end of Volta, northern end of Brong-Ahafo, the northern region, the upper west and upper east regions, in order to do at least a couple of things. One is help the small farmer, many of whom are women-headed households, de facto, and with very small acreage, to be more productive. And the other, at the other extreme, is the large-scale commercial farming in a way that protects Ghanaians' legal interests and respects the role of chieftaincies in the leasing and other use of land, which is a key issue here in Ghana, and understandably so. So we have, for example, with regard to the latter, we have a large program here together with the World Bank. It's called the Ghana Commercial Agricultural Project, or GCAP. The United States AID, on behalf of the American people, is putting up to $50 million into that activity, while the World Bank while the World Bank's providing loan funding of up to $100 million. And that's to catalyze infrastructure improvements like agriculture and other investments to bring better quality soils into more productive use for larger tracts of land, to really stimulate the output and job creation in the north. This is in areas like rice and different kinds of maize production, for example. And we already see some activity underway, for example, under the private sector approaches from Dutch commercial interests that have been impressively successful already up in the north. On the side of the small farmer, to me, that's from a development perspective that affects very low-income families' lives. It's one of the most heartening and exciting things I've seen in my career. Together with Ghanaian private sector and Ghanaian partners from the Ministry of Agriculture, we have seen our programs in agriculture in the north go from 30 small farmers to 300 small farmers to 3,000 small farmers, and now to 35,000 small farmers. And our targets in the next year or so are to move to 100,000 small farmers. And what we are seeing is that this is not a handout program. This is a commercially viable, sustainable, demand-driven approach to improving agriculture and people's livelihoods in a matter of a few seasons. And I'll just give one example. You can find them all over the regions I just mentioned. One of the women-headed households had a certain amount of bags of soybean production, for example. In the last season, she tripled her production. Tripled her production. And you know what that means in the life of a very low-income family. When you can triple your main course of income, it means she can afford to send her children to school, pay the school fees. She can get her children the medicine they need when they are deathly ill. She can provide better food and nutrition for them. These are changing lives on the scale that I have not seen in decades. And I think Ghana is on the verge of a revolution in agriculture in the north, and I am very bullish on that. The targets are ones that were asked about, and those are ones we try to work with our stakeholders, with the technical professionals, but also with the local agricultural workers at the district assembly levels, and that used to be with the Ministry of Agriculture and are now reporting through decentralized ways at the district level in Ghana, and with the farmers themselves. So I think it's a very exciting thing. Watch this space. These are what we call zones of influence for more modern methods, and I think Ghana and the people of Ghana, especially in the north, are going to be really, really on a dynamic new path and a better income path.
Thank you very much, Jim. So if you just joined this Hangout, we're having a conversation with Jim Bever, the outgoing Mission Director for USAID Ghana. It's Jim's last days, and it sounds like you're doing really awesome in the space of agriculture. So we had another follow-on question with respect to agri, and this was from Emmanuel Guache, also on Facebook. And he says, USAID should help us add value to our farm produce and support us to depend on ourselves in the near future. Thanks for serving humanity. Jim, you have any comments on that?
Thanks, Yao. You know, the question of adding value, I think, is a very perceptive one. So the questioner, I thank the questioner for that. What we try to do is go in and ask a lot of questions first. We don't have all the answers, but when we see a good idea, we know it when we see it. And there have been a lot of efforts here in the last few years to find ways to add value. Maybe it's to add value to the soil. It's one of the problems in parts of northern Ghana, is depleting soil value. And you know, if you're going to grow something, you have to have good soil to start with, or you have to replenish the soil. So soybeans, for example, it's a nitrogen-fixing plant, which means if you grow it naturally, the soil in which you're growing it is going to be better for the next crops. Adding more organic matter to that soil, whether it's from manure from animals or other plant byproducts, can also add quality value to the soil, which means the soil has a chance to retain any other additives that are put into it, like fertilizer, for example, so that when you put the seed in it, it's a much more productive seed. And that's the other real value added, is better quality seeds, both seeds developed by Ghanaians themselves in their own plant breeding operations, and or imported seeds of hybrid quality that are best producers around the world, that then are tested here in Ghana by government agriculturalists for safety standards before they're released for the farmers to buy and then provide. So there are better techniques as well. These are all ways to add value. And why is the adding value important? When a farmer takes the time, effort, and expense to take the risks on new seed varieties or new techniques, it can mean the difference between hunger for that farmer or prosperity, if it's done right or not right. And this is not trivial. This is basically the most primal risks that a farm and a farm family can take. And we can't make it rain, but if the rains are good and everything else is working well, that farmer is going to benefit. The final end is what we call post-harvest period. Once the harvest has been made, what are the technical improvements there to reduce losses from either pests or fungus or aflatoxin or drying techniques so the moisture level is at the right amount for quality control. And so we've introduced a number of techniques that are catching on fast in the immediate post-harvest part of the agricultural chain, including proper storage in dry, protected warehouses and quality control so that when a buyer wants to buy a certain quality of white maize or yellow maize or rice or soy, they know what they're buying, and that product has equal value to anybody else's with the same quality control. These are all dynamic elements, but the Ghanaian farmers I have seen at any level are perfectly capable of absorbing those kinds of improvements. I think the only other thing is how those products are bagged, how they are manufactured for poultry feed, and the kind of partnerships we have with the private sector, whether they are buyers for the poultry industry, which is growing, or whether they're buyers for the fish farming, which is growing in Lake Volta, or buyers for the beer industry, which is growing, or buyers for the World Food Program, or buyers for the child feeding program here in Ghana, the Ghana government. All of the above are growing markets for what I believe will be a breadbasket in the north.
Thank you very much, Jim. So joining this discussion is one of our 2014 Mandela Washington Fellows, Ifua. Welcome to this discussion.
Thank you.
Would you kindly go ahead and introduce yourself and ask your question?
Okay, so my name is Ifua Prempe. I am one of the 18 young people who were selected last year as part of President Obama's Young African Leadership Initiative. We're placed in different institutions where we had classroom work first and then some field experience, including community service. And we are back sharing what we learned and trying to make the change that we've always sought. I'm an environmentalist, and so I'm going to ask Jim a question, and I'm going to start with an environmental one. Climate change has gained a lot of prominence in the last couple of decades, and the need for sustainable development is also something that we cannot overlook. So I'd want to ask how Ghana can collaborate, how we can, and the different forms that we can come together to help communities adapt to this change, to climate change, and adapt and produce and grow sustainably.
Well, thank you. Okay. Thank you, Ifua. Do we have her on? Me. Okay. Well, that's a profoundly important issue. It's not just a matter of a nice thing to do. As we found in our own country, it's a matter of obligation for one generation to pass on to the next. The next generation should not inherit the mess that we make. And if we have the knowledge of the implications of the effects of what we do on the sustainability of a natural resource base or the ability of a country to earn an income and move towards more prosperity, we owe it to ourselves and our future generations. That means more to me because I've just become a grandfather, so it's now 2 generations I'm concerned about, not only my own, my children's, but my grandchildren's. We went through a really difficult period in our own country. I want to relate what we've done in America with the challenges Africa has, and Ghana in particular. Back in the 1960s, we had an awful environmental situation in our country. And that was the United States of America, with all of our wealth and all of our might and of all of our educational capability. But the idea of the common good, the public commons, was something we hadn't thought about that much. And we had rivers that actually were so polluted they burned. Cleveland, Ohio is a good case. The Potomac River in Washington, D.C. was one, when I was a kid, you could not swim there. It was so dangerously polluted. And after some very important legislation and then lawsuits when the government or other companies were not implementing those laws, things started to change. And people became more aware of the health hazards and impacts on people's jobs of not protecting our environment. For example, the fisheries area where I grew up, the crab catch, the seafood catch crashed. That was in the early 1970s. It's taken 40 years to even begin to build back up to what that rich capability was. Thousands of fishermen lost their livelihoods. So these are very serious issues, and they affect the economy, they affect people's jobs, they affect people's health. So let's look at Ghana. The fact that you're even asking that question is a good one, is a good thing. And whether it's climate change, and we don't know how much climate change is necessarily affecting Ghana, what we can see is that at least temporarily, the Akosombo Dam, for example, does not have as much water in it as normally they would have expected it. And that has massive implications on the country right there. If it's getting warmer, in places where it used to be different temperatures at certain altitudes, that affects everything from mosquito vectors that bring malaria to crop productivity for agriculture. So we are trying to work together with your government and with civil society, environmental groups, universities, and others to enhance environmental protection, to support you to enhance environmental protection here in Ghana. One thing to bear in mind is population growth. Just like in our country, when that Akosombo Dam was built, there were 8 million Ghanaians. Today there's over 25, 26 million Ghanaians in the same land. The forest cover is diminished by 70%, 80%. The streams and rivers, some of them, especially with the illegal mining in certain areas, have led to pollution that's completely wiped out the fish, young fish, breeding areas in the mangrove swamps in the western part of the country. Doesn't mean they can't come back, just like in our country they did. Offshore fishing has declined from 120,000 tons of capture a year to maybe 25,000 or 30,000 tons of fish catch. If it goes much further, you could potentially have a crash in the ocean fish harvests, which would have profound effects on tens of thousands of Ghanaians' families all along the coast. So these have very severe consequences. I think many of the laws are on the books, the regulations are on the books, the plans are on the books, the strategies are on the books. It's the implementation that really requires steadfast attention, and that's where people like yourself, young African leaders, both women and men, those in business, those in advocacy, civil society groups and others, need to stand up and continue to be counted and support the implementation of those laws and regulations, and hold the government, just like our American civil society does, hold us in the executive branch accountable to carry out those acts and make sure the budget is there in a very tight budget period. So we are trying to do our share, whether it's in agriculture with bringing in drought-resistant seeds or no-tillage forms of agriculture where you don't have to turn the soil over, you can plant the seed and save fuel and save time and effort, or irrigation improvements, or new fisheries projects, which we have just launched with your Ministry of Fisheries, especially in the western region, or new natural resource management protection projects. These are the kinds of things we're trying to do both with your government and with willing partners in the Ghanaian for-profit sector and the Ghanaian civil society, so that yourselves, your children, and your grandchildren have a better chance in the future of prosperity.
Thank you very much, Jim. So if you're just joining this Hangout, it's our last discussion with Jim Bever, the outgoing Mission Director for USAID Ghana. And you may join this discussion on our Facebook page, US Embassy Ghana, or you can join us on Twitter. Just tweet at us at US Embassy Ghana and post your questions, and we'll get them over to Jim. So in preparing for this discussion, we also got some requests from some of our online contacts. And Nelson Kweku Danso sent this in on Facebook. He says, my village, Unapase, is a cocoa growing area, and we would like you to help us get potable drinking water. Jim?
Okay, thank you, yeah. Nelson, thank you for that question. We do have some activities where we try to improve the availability of potable water. We're focusing increasingly, however, I need to be straight with you on this, on improved sanitation. We have to look at Ghana from a national perspective. Ghana's done a reasonably good job at advancing the Millennium Development Goals related to potable water distribution, although there are obviously many places in the country which still could benefit from improved potable water. There are many techniques out there. If you call us here at the U.S. Embassy and ask for USAID, we'll see what we can do to follow up with you or put you in touch with those who have provided cooperation with local communities to improve their potable water supply. We just opened such a facility in Ntonkoful village outside of Takoradi, and we have done this elsewhere, but our funds are very limited, so we need to make sure that our money goes for the greatest value for the most number of people. But we can certainly put you in touch with people who can provide your community some know-how and maybe help you mobilize the right funds and techniques so you can provide that water for your people.
Thank you, Jim. So I want us to go back to Ifwa. Ifwa, do you have any more questions for Jim?
I have one more question. And I'd like to thank you, Said, for contributing so much to grooming young talent. Young people want to do things to help communities, social entrepreneurs. I'd like to know if there are any programs in place that would help young people who want to start their own business, social entrepreneurship businesses. Are there programs that mentor such people? And how can people access this facility?
Afua, thank you. Can you just share with those listening what you mean? What would be a good example of social entrepreneurship? Tangibly, something really tangible?
Okay, so helping children read after school so that it helps them build up their capacity outside of the classroom, makes them better, so it contributes to the society, and then it's not necessarily not for profit. It's for profit, but it helps the society as well. Okay.
All right. Well, let me just make a general statement, then I'll give you a specific example. The general statement is that we're the U.S. government. We have good ideas, but we do not have all the good ideas. I can guarantee you that. But we really know a good idea when we see one, and we are very open to new innovations and new approaches. More so in this particular administration of President Obama than I have seen in my entire career. We have what's called the Global Development Laboratory, which seeks out new, fresh, good ideas and approaches that come often from younger generation, and now that I'm into the fourth generation, my 7th decade of life, I've come to appreciate and respect those bright, fresh, out-of-the-box, creative ideas and the technical skills of those in their even upper teens and in their 20s and early 30s especially. So we're open to those ideas from the social entrepreneurs here in Ghana, the young women and young men. One example on education is we are about to launch a innovation in education program where we are seeking exactly what you just gave as an example. Those Ghanaians who have ideas about how to help children read better and faster in any of the main languages in Ghana, as well as English. So stay tuned, watch this space, we're open to it. We also respond to unsolicited proposals of any size. I will say we only fund the ones that really add creative new value to what we already have in our portfolio of implementing activities. Thanks.
Thank you, Jim. So again, we had some questions on corruption and accountability. Now, Sami Dadapa Christian Aivi, also on Facebook, sent in a comment or a question, I would say. He said, you have researchers and secret investigators all over USA. Why don't you have the same here in Africa to check and monitor if the resource and funds you give for us are really used for the reasons of your vision? So I guess what he's trying to say is how is USAID helping in monitoring the grants and the resources that you're giving Ghanaians for the implementation of various projects?
Okay. Well, first of all, thanks for the question. I'm not sure what the implication of the term secret researchers was. We don't do secret work in USAID. There may be secrets of our success, and we try to share those. But we do have occasionally investigators of our government who work with investigators of the Ghanaian government to make sure that the U.S. assistance program dollars that are partnered with the Ghanaian government's CDs in our projects together are correctly spent. And if there's discovery of waste, fraud, abuse, corruption, which happens in every economy, every government, every society, including our own, and even among our private sector partners or even our civil society partners, then we will work with the government of Ghana to assure that it can prosecute and convict those who are guilty of misuse of your taxpayer funds or our taxpayer funds. So in terms of making sure the money is spent well, we're very serious about that. We look for results, and it's one of the things that has really been a hallmark of USAID. We're not perfect, but we sure try really hard for those results. So we have monitoring and evaluation as one of the fundamental cornerstones of our approach to development, and we try to build that capacity into Ghanaian government officers and institutions, as well as our partners in the private sector and civil society. So those independent monitors and independent evaluators are constantly on patrol, if you will, to try to make sure that our funds are being spent most productively. And if you out there in the audience are aware of things that are succeeding well, we want to know about it. If you have questions that the money is being spent unwisely or there's malfeasance, we want to know about that too. Just call us here at USAID and the U.S. Embassy, or call your own government, your own auditors and accountability institutions, and let them know. We have programs here, by the way, with the Ghanaian Integrity Initiative. We have programs with the state audit authorities, and we have programs with the Parliament's oversight committees for accountability to help strengthen the wise use of your money and our money on these programs together.
Thank you, Jim. So, retracting to Ifwa's comments or question, I wanted to find out how does building these young social entrepreneurs tie in with the Yali initiative that USAID is working on as well? The President's Young African Leaders Initiative.
Yeah. Well, many of the Yali professionals are entrepreneurs, and they are social entrepreneurs. And we are now creating a regional center, which we believe will be here in Accra, and we're finalizing the last elements of those agreements as USAID. It happens to be through our West Africa mission, which is co-located here at the U.S. Embassy in Accra. So if listeners have questions about that, please again contact us. And that will provide a facility for in-service education and training, best practices, and support for young entrepreneurs as well. So we also have some support mechanisms for small and medium enterprises, including for social entrepreneurs. And we have arrangements with some of the banks here through credit authorities to help cover some of the risks that the banks enter into in providing small loans to small and medium enterprises. So we have a wide array of mechanisms, and we coordinate with our other development partners who have even larger ones sometimes than we do in certain areas. I'll just finish this answer by saying the future of Africa and your country is in your hands. I firmly believe in the power of leadership and the difference that makes as a catalyst for changing the status quo. And so it's going to be you and many of your friends and colleagues and peers that are going to make the difference, not just in Ghana, but in Africa and therefore in the world. And that is something we Americans also will immediately benefit from as well.
Right. Thank you, Jim. So since it's your last days in Ghana right now, we just wanted to ask, what has been your experience? What has been your impression? We want to know what you're taking with you and what you're leaving about Ghana, your impressions and experience in Ghana.
I came to Ghana, I sought Ghana out because after 10 or 12 years of working in some of the most violently conflicted areas of the world, I had heard about Ghana. I've actually watched Ghana over 40 years. I started out right next door here as a 22-year-old young officer in Togo, watching Ghana go through a very difficult period in the mid-1970s. And I've been heartened to see the direction that Ghana has taken over the last couple of generations. And so rather than focusing on Africa as a place of problems and poverty, I see a Ghana and an Africa rising, where the real challenge is how to channel the providence of the future and the prosperity that can come to the people of this land. And I mean that very sincerely, or I would not have come here and brought my wife here at this stage of my own career. Ghana motivated me, Ghana inspired me. And okay, so I've been here a year and a half, and there are times we can be disappointed, but frankly we have disappointments back in our own country at times. So I think it's important to look at the positive. And when one compares Ghana with others in the region, or others in sub-Saharan Africa, or even others in the lower middle income strata of the world, Ghana has much to be proud of. There's a certain well-deserved self-respect and pride here in Ghana that I find enormously appealing. There's aspirations of the Ghanaian leaders and the Ghanaian people that I find highly motivating and are highly worthy of admiration. Ghana has and continues to make progress in certain areas that are stunning, frankly, and that take a lot of courage, whether it's doing the early grade reading and early grade mathematic assessment of young children. That took a lot of courage. to do that kind of self-reflection. Or it's the demographic health survey. I've taken a look at the kind of rigor that goes into that in this country, and Ghana should be proud of that professional rigor. So I have learned a lot here in Ghana, even at my stage of life. I love the Ghanaian people. I love how warm and open they are, and that also impresses me. Is Ghanaians are open to change. They're open to new ideas, more so than many cultures I've worked with in the world, including some elements in my own country. Ghanaians are willing to give new ideas a try. It doesn't mean there aren't naturally interests that want to protect the status quo. We find that in every culture, including in our own country, and that's normal for human nature and governments, even private sector and civil society institutions. But Ghanaians are willing to give it a go, and there's the give and take and push and pull that comes naturally with a democratic system that, to me, augurs well for sustainability of eventually getting it right over time in Ghana. So I leave Ghana in a bittersweet way because I've loved it here. I wish I could spend more time here, and I will always carry a little bit of Ghana in my heart. And when I'm back at headquarters, which is where I'm headed next in Washington, I will do all I can to make sure Ghana gets the best deal it can get in terms of continued partnership with the American people, because we both benefit. Please, those of you listening, do not think of what we do here in Ghana as handouts or donations. We have a foreign assistance program because it's in the interests of the American people. And think of what we do here as an investment in your future. And we expect, as any investors, to earn dividends from that, even though it's a grant basis. And what are those dividends? We expect to see a better electricity supply situation and distribution situation in Ghana over the next few years. We expect to see better health conditions, lower infant mortality, lower maternal mortality, lower malaria prevalence in this country. We expect to see better agricultural production, better nutrition, less stunting of children, especially in the north. And we expect to see continuation of a democratic electoral process here, that Ghana is a model for the world, not just in Africa. That stunned me again when I saw how the democratic process worked here in the last 2 years. So those are dividends which redound to the benefit of the Ghanaian citizen, for more stability, for more prosperity, for your own people. But frankly, Americans win that way too. We have better partners to trade with. We benefit from Ghanaian brains when they come to our country and help our economy. When Ghana helps protect the security of neighboring countries, we all benefit from that, and Ghana is a leader in that. So this is a mutual partnership between equals in the world, and we're proud of the 60-year-long tradition since Ghana's independence, and we're going to continue to do that through the American Assistance Program into the future.
Thank you very much, Jim. Well, let me say that that's a great job done. We are so grateful for all that you have invested in Ghana. I am sure the Ghanaian people are particularly proud of you for doing this great job. Congratulations also for being a grandfather and for transcending several generations. So if you joined us, this was a discussion with Jim Bever, the outgoing mission director for USAID Ghana. We've been talking about everything from Power Africa to Feed the Future, Agri, social entrepreneurship, and we rounded up with his thoughts about Ghana, his thoughts and experiences about Ghana. I want to say a big thank you to Efua Prempe, our 2014 Mandela Washington Fellow, who joined us in this discussion. And thank you to you who logged in to join us. Keep your questions coming in. You can follow us on Facebook www.facebook.com/US Embassy Ghana, or follow us on Twitter. You can tweet at us at US Embassy Ghana, and you can leave your questions. We'll definitely follow on with responses. But it's been great having Jim. Jim, any last words?
Just to say that this is obviously not about me. This is about the Ghanaian people and the American people and my staff, who I want to just stand behind me for a moment. If we've got a few seconds left, come on. We have over 70 Ghanaian and American staff, so a few of them are here to give me courage during this. So come on up close, y'all. So you will see some of my colleagues here, and in future Google Hangouts like this, I am expecting that my staff, our staff here, will also get online and be able to talk with you and those of you who ask those questions. In the end, it's all about the team, and I'm only as good as they are. So I just want to close on that remark.
All right, viewers, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Jim Bever. Thank you to your staff. And thanks for your questions. Thank you to IFWA. My name is Yao Kuonu. I'm the Public Affairs section, and I've been your moderator for this session. You have a wonderful week.